Sufism or Tasawwuf is defined as the inner mystical dimension of Islam. Practitioners of Sufism, referred to as Sufis, often belong to different ṭuruq or orders, congregations formed around a grand master referred to as a mawla who traces a direct chain of teachers back to the Islamic prophet, Muhammad. These orders meet for spiritual sessions in meeting places known as zawiyas, khanqahs, or tekke. Sufis strive for Ihsan as detailed in a hadith. Ihsan is to worship Allah as if you see him. If you can't see him, surely he sees you. Rumi stated, the Sufi is hanging on to Muhammad, like Abu Bakr. Sufis regard Muhammad as al-Insān, al-Kāmil, the primary perfect man who exemplifies the morality of God. Sufis regard Muhammad as the leader and prime spiritual guide. All Sufi orders trace many of their original precepts from Muhammad through his cousin and son-in-law Ali, with the notable exception of the Naqshbandi, who claim to trace their origins through the first Rashid Caliph, Abu Bakr. Sufi orders largely follow one of the four madhabs of Sunni Islam and maintain a Sunni aqidah. Classical Sufis were characterized by their asceticism, especially by their attachment to dhikr, the practice of repeating the names of God, often performed after prayers. Sufism gained adherents among a number of Muslims as a reaction against the worldliness of the early Umayyad Caliphate. Sufis have spanned several continents and cultures over a millennium, originally expressing the beliefs in Arabic before spreading into Persian, Turkish, and Urdu among dozens of other languages. According to William Chittick, in a broad sense, Sufism can be described as the interiorization and intensification of Islamic faith and practice. Terminology. Historically, Muslims have used the word tasawwuf to identify the practice of Sufis. Mainstream scholars of Islam define tasawwuf or Sufism as simply the name for the inner or esoteric dimension of Islam which is supported and complemented by outward or exoteric practices of Islam, such as Islamic law. In this view, it is absolutely necessary to be a Muslim to be a true Sufi, because Sufism's methods are inoperative without Muslim affiliation. However, the Islamic scholars themselves are not by any means in agreement about the meaning of the word Sufi. In contrast, Sufi writer Idris Shah states that Sufism is universal in nature, its roots predating the rise of Islam and Christianity. Such modern trends of neo-Sufis in Western countries allow non-Muslims to receive instructions on following the Sufi path, not without opposition by Muslims who consider such instruction outside the sphere of Islam. Sufis themselves claim that tasawwuf is an aspect of Islam similar to Sharia, inseparable from Islam and an integral part of Islamic belief and practice. Classical Sufi scholars have defined tasawwuf as a science whose objective is the reparation of the heart and turning it away from all else but God. Alternatively, in the words of the Darqawi teacher Ahmad ibn Ajiba, a science through which one can know how to travel into the presence of the divine, purify one's inner self from filth, and beautify it with a variety of praiseworthy traits. Traditional Sufis such as Bayazid Bastami, Rumi, Haji Bektash Vali, Junaid of Baghdad, and al-Ghazali, define Sufism as purely based upon the tenets of Islam and the teachings of Muhammad. Etymology. Sufi. Two origins of the word Sufi have been suggested. Commonly, the lexical root of the word is traced to safa, which in Arabic means purity. Another origin is suf, wool in Arabic, referring to the simple cloaks the early Muslim ascetics wore. The two were combined by the Sufi al-Rudabari, who said the Sufi is the one who wears wool on top of purity. Scholars generally agree that suf or wool is probably the root word of Sufi. Others have suggested that the word comes from the term al-Sufa, who were a group of impoverished companions of Muhammad who held regular gatherings of dhikr. These men and women who sat at al-Masjid an-Nabawi are considered by some to be the first Sufis. Al-Qushayri and Ibn Khaldun both rejected all possibilities other than Suf on linguistic grounds. History. Origins. Eminent Sufis such as Ali Hujwiri claimed that the tradition first began with Ali. Furthermore, Junayd of Baghdad regarded Ali as the sheikh of the principles and practices of Sufism. Practitioners of Sufism hold that in its early stages of development Sufism effectively referred to nothing more than the internalization of Islam. According to one perspective, it is directly from the Quran, constantly recited, meditated, and experienced, that Sufism proceeded, in its origin and its development. Others have held that Sufism is the strict emulation of the way of Muhammad, through which the heart's connection to the divine is strengthened. According to Marshall Hodgson, the early Muslim conquests had brought large numbers of Christian monks and hermits, especially in Syria and Egypt. Under the rule of Muslims, they retained a vigorous spiritual life for centuries after the conquests, and many of the especially pious Muslims who founded Sufism were influenced by the techniques and methods. However, others disagree with this view, asserting Sufism to be unique within the confines of the Islamic religion and contending that Sufism developed from devout followers of Islam, like Bayezid Bastami, who, in his utmost reverence to the Sunnah, refused to eat a watermelon because he did not find any proof that Muhammad ever ate it. According to the late medieval mystic Jami, Abdallah ibn Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiya was the first person to be called a Sufi. Important contributions in writing are attributed to Uwais al-Nurani, Hassan of Basra, Harith al-Muhasibi, and Said ibn al-Musayyib. Ruwaym, from the second generation of Sufis in Baghdad, was also an influential early figure, as was Junayd of Baghdad. A number of early practitioners of Sufism were disciples of one of the two. Sufism had a long history already before the subsequent institutionalization of Sufi teachings into devotional orders in the early Middle Ages. The Naqshbandi order is a notable exception to general rule of orders tracing the spiritual lineage through Muhammad's grandsons, as it traces the origin of its teachings from Muhammad to the first Islamic caliph, Abu Bakr. Over the years, Sufi orders have been influenced and adopted by various Shia movements, especially Ismailism, which led to the Safaviya order's conversion to Shia Islam and the spread of Twelverism throughout Iran. Sufi orders include Bahá'íyya, Badawiya, Bektashi, Burhaniya, Chishti, Khalwati, Mevlevi, Naqshbandi, Ni'matullahi, Uwaisi, Qadiriya, Qalandaiya, Rifa'i, Sawari Qadiri, Shadliya, Sarwadiya, Tijaniya, and many others. As an Islamic discipline, Sufism is a mystical ascetic aspect of Islam. It is not a sect, rather it is considered as the part of Islamic teaching that deals with the purification of the inner self, by focusing on the more spiritual aspects of religion. Sufis strive to obtain direct experience of God by making use of intuitive and emotional faculties that one must be trained to use. Tasawwuf is regarded as a science of Islam that has always been an integral part of Orthodox Islam. In his al-Risala al-Safadiyya, Ibn Taymiyyah describes the Sufis as those who belong to the path of the Sunnah and represented in the teachings and writings. Ibn Taymiyyah's Sufi inclinations and his reverence for Sufis like Abd al-Qadir Gilani can also be seen in his 100-page commentary on Fatah al-Ghayb, covering only 5 of the 78 sermons of the book, but showing that he considered Tasawwuf essential within the life of the Islamic community. In his commentary, Ibn Taymiyyah stresses that the primacy of the Shari forms the soundest tradition in Tasawwuf. and to argue this point he lists over a dozen early masters, as well as more contemporary sheikhs, like his fellow Hanbalis, al-Ansari al-Harawi and Abd al-Qadir, and the latter's own Sheikh Hamad al-Dabis. The upright among the followers of the path, like the majority of the early sheikhs such as Fudayl ibn Iyad, Ibrahim ibn Adam, Ruf al-Kaki, al-Sari al-Sakati, al-Junayd ibn Muhammad, and others of the early teachers, as well as Sheikh Abd al-Qadir, Sheikh Hamad, Sheikh Abu al-Bayyan and others of the later masters, do not permit the followers of the Sufi path to depart from the divinely legislated command and prohibition. Imam Ghazali narrates in Al-Munqidh min al-Dalal, "The vicissitudes of life, family affairs and financial constraints engulfed my life and deprived me of the congenial solitude. The heavy odds confronted me and provided me with few moments for my pursuits. This state of affairs lasted for 10 years, but wherever I had some spare and congenial moments I resorted to my intrinsic proclivity. During these turbulent years, numerous astonishing and indescribable secrets of life were unveiled to me. I was convinced that the group of Allah is the only truthful group who follow the right path, display best conduct and surpass all sages in their wisdom and insight. They derive all their overt covert behavior from the illumining guidance of the Holy Prophet, the only guidance worth quest and pursuit." Formalization of doctrine. Towards the end of the first millennium, a number of manuals began to be written summarizing the doctrines of Sufism and describing some typical Sufi practices. Two of the most famous of these are now available in English translation: the Kashf al-Madhub of al-Hushwiri and the Risala of al-Qushayri, two of Ahmad Ghazali's greatest treatises of the revival of religious sciences, and what he termed its essence, the alchemy of happiness. He argued that Sufism originated from the Quran and thus was compatible with mainstream Islamic thought, and did not in any way contradict Islamic law, being instead necessary to its complete fulfillment. This became the mainstream position among Islamic scholars for centuries, challenged only recently on the basis of selective use of a limited body of texts. Ongoing efforts by both traditionally trained Muslim scholars and Western academics are making Imam al-Ghazali's works more widely available in English translation, allowing English-speaking readers to judge for themselves the compatibility of Islamic law and Sufi doctrine. Several sections of the Revival of Religious Sciences have been published in translation by the Islamic Text Society. An abridged translation of The Alchemy of Happiness was published by Cladfield in 1910. It has been translated in full by Muhammad Azam Bilal. Growth of influence. The rise of Islamic civilization coincides strongly with the spread of Sufi philosophy in Islam. The spread of Sufism has been considered a definitive factor in the spread of Islam, and in the creation of integrally Islamic cultures, especially in Africa and Asia. The Senussi tribes of Libya and the Sudan are one of the strongest adherents of Sufism. Sufi poets and philosophers such as Khoja Ahmad Yasur, Rumi, and Attar of Nishapur greatly enhanced the spread of Islamic culture in Anatolia, Central Asia, and South Asia. Sufism also played a role in creating and propagating the culture of the Ottoman world, and in resisting European imperialism in North Africa and South Asia. Between the 13th and 16th centuries, Sufism produced a flourishing intellectual culture throughout the Islamic world, a golden age whose physical artifacts survive. In many places a person group would endow a waqf to maintain a lodge to provide a gathering place for Sufi adepts, as well as lodging for itinerant seekers of knowledge. The same system of endowments could also pay for a complex of buildings, such as that surrounding the Suleymaniye Mosque in Istanbul. available, including a lodge for Sufi seekers, a hospice with kitchens where these seekers could serve the poor and or complete a period of initiation, a library, and other structures. No important domain in the civilization of Islam remained unaffected by Sufism in this period. Current Sufi orders include Aliens, Bektashi order, Mevlevi order, Ba al-Awliya, Chishti order, Jerahi, Naqshbandi, Ni'matullahi, Qadiriya, Qalandaiya, Sawari Qadiriya, Shadliya, Sarwardiya, Ashrafa family, Saifa, and Uazi. The relationship of Sufi orders to modern societies is usually defined by the relationship to governments. Turkey and Persia together have been a center for many Sufi lineages and orders. The Bektashi was closely affiliated with the Ottoman Janissaries and is the heart of Turkey's large and mostly liberal Alevi population. It has been spread westwards to Cyprus, Greece, Albania, Bulgaria, Macedonia, Bosnia, Kosovo, and, more recently, to the USA via Albania. Sufism is popular in such African countries as Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and Senegal, where it is seen as a mystical expression of Islam. Sufism is traditional in Morocco but has seen a growing revival with the renewal of Sufism under contemporary spiritual teachers such as Sidi Hamza, al-Qadiri al-Bakshishi. Mabaka suggests that one reason Sufism has taken hold in Senegal is because it can accommodate local beliefs and customs, which tend toward the mystical. The life of the Algerian Sufi master Emir Abd al-Qadir is instructive in this regard. Notable as well are the lives of Amadou Bamba and Hadi Umar Tall in sub-Saharan Africa, and Sheikh Mansour Yus Herma and Imam Shamil in the Caucasus region. In the 20th century, some Muslims have called Sufism a superstitious religion that holds back Islamic achievement in the fields of science and technology. A number of Westerners have embarked with varying degrees of success on the path of Sufism. One of the first to return to Europe as an official representative of a Sufi order, and with the specific purpose to spread Sufism in Western Europe, was the Swedish-born wandering Sufi Ivan Ague Acuteli. René Guénon, the French scholar, became a Sufi in the early 20th century and was known as Sheikh Abdul Wahad Jafar. His manifold writings defined the practice of Sufism as the essence of Islam but also pointed to the universality of its message. Other spiritualists, such as George Gurdjieff, may or may not conform to the tenets of Sufism as understood by Orthodox Muslims. Other noteworthy Sufi teachers who have been active in the West in recent years include Bawa Mahiruddin, Inayat Khan, Nazim al-Haqqani, Javad Nurbakhsh, Bulent Rauf, Irina Tweedy, Idris Shah, Muzaffar Ozark, Nafid Angub, and Ali Khan Fair. Currently active Sufi academics and publishers include Llewellyn Vaughan, Nuh Mimkela, Abdullah Noruddin Durki, Wahid Ashraf, Omar Tarian, and Timothy Winter.